We're glad that you're all here. Just a few things to remember before we start. This is not an AA meeting. It is Paul H.'s reflections on the exact nature of the wrong as described on page 64 of the AA Big Book and the solution found in the 12 steps. This meeting is being recorded and is being streamed live on Facebook. Also, please remember that this is not an all-share meeting. Rather, it's a question and answers for Paul H.'s take on the 12 steps or the reading. For details on all Paul's events, his story, Under Arrest, books, the t-shirts and past events, check out the website zenbitchslap.com. So let's get things underway. I've selected a passage from the Big Book to read on page 67. And I'm going to hand it over to Paul and let him riff on it. So here we go. Paul, the passage, the reading today is on page 67, middle of the page. Referring to our list again, putting out of the minds the wrongs others have done, we resolutely look for our own mistakes, where it we've been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, or frightened. Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. Where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. We saw our faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly and were willing to set these matters straight. Notice that the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties of Mr. Brown, Miss Jones, the employer, and his wife. This short word somehow touches every aspect of our life. It was the evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. It set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. But did we ourselves set the ball rolling? Did not we ourselves set the ball rolling? Sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. We ask ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. So that's the reading. I thought about what you were talking about in the last meeting. You know, well, it wasn't the last meeting; it was a couple back. We said when we're not looking, when we're writing fear, we're not looking for fear. We're looking to see how self-reliance failed. So that was why I kind of picked that reading. So back to you, my friend.
Thanks, Kurt, and good morning, everybody. Good morning in California. Paul, alcoholic. Yeah, this obviously, you find this in How It Works, which is an apt description of the chapter, how it works. So, referring to our list again, I think that's going back to the column 4. If you look at it as Joe and Charlie put out that 4-column inventory, it would be the first 3, and then you go back to your list again, I think, and then you see your role in things. So when you hit, I think, 3, you basically, they use that suggestion of looking at other people as maybe as perhaps as sick as you, yeah, so that you can have some kind of tolerance or forgiveness, or at least having an inspiration towards that direction. Then it moves into that fear, which is, you know, if it was a corroding thread that shot through the fabric of our existence, and let's say the fabric of our existence is blue and the thread is blue, it's going to be difficult to discern that thread amongst all the other threads. But to me, AA recovery gives you a way of seeing that thread as different than the other threads. And then it gives you the diagnosis. Obviously, it says it's this fear of not getting what we want or losing what we have or whatever it may be, sets in motion a lot of trains of circumstances which bring us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. Yeah. So if you switch that around, in a way, faith in the program set off trains of circumstances which brought us fortune we felt we didn't deserve, which initiated gratitude. Yeah. So it's the same it's the same trajectory. It's based on where the faith lies. If the faith lies in self, fear gets produced. Yeah. And then the fear sets off these trains of circumstances that bring you misfortune. If there's faith in the infinite, faith sets off the course of the decision, and it sets off trains of circumstances that bring you great fortune you feel you don't deserve. So now you're in gratitude. Yeah. There's gonna be a trajectory, and there's gonna be trains of circumstances. Yeah. That unless you can just live in a hermetically sealed situation. Basically, so what's going to set the course of that train of circumstance, or what rail it's going to ride on, is based on faith or fear, really. Yeah. If you have faith in self, that translates as fear. If you have faith in the infinite, that translates to faith. Yeah. In other words, you have an assurance that no matter how it looks, that it's probably going to be okay. It's going to turn out. Where the other thing, no matter how it looks, you think it's going to get worse, so to speak. Yeah. So that something's going to happen. And I would say what really initiates how that rock rolls down the hill is what's pushing it, faith or fear. And then they give you that fourth column of, and where had we been? Selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened. So 2 out of 4 have the word self in it. And really, it could be all 4, because the selfishness and self-seeking and frightened, I think, triggers the dishonesty and the whatever they said, the other one, the inconsideration. Yeah, so basically it's 2 out of 2. It's 4 out of 4. I don't understand why. There's a lot of emphasis put on self, but there's a lot of vagueness about what it may be or not be. Yeah, I feel, and I would say I haven't done the research, but I would imagine self is mentioned more than any other thing in the book. Yeah, so it has a certain point of, and it's always, right there when the incomprehensible, pitiful demoralization. Self-imposed, manufacturing our own misery, which I don't believe. I think self is what manufactures the misery, and all like this. And then they go into the diagnosis, which is incredible. So they first let you, look at that fear, and then to see the fabric of your existence being shot through with it. And then they give you the diagnosis, which is, you're missing the point. It's not, the emphasis isn't on fear, it's on self-reliance. Because he says, we asked ourselves why we had them. Yeah. He doesn't let us answer. He says, he gives us the answer. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Or he suggests an answer. Yeah. So before I give my answer, he wants to have a pause where maybe you can hear what they suggest is the answer, which is self-reliance is really the cause of the fear. Yeah. And all the anxiety, for sure. So, all right. So do you want to become a master of fear? Or do you want to see who's the master, self or the infinite? Yeah. I would think the latter is the is the most efficient way. Yeah, I met people who used to write all day, all their fears, and then bring it to God and ask it to be removed. But in a way, you could see that as obsession with self, because the self is just going to keep telling you you have more fears. So you'll be busy writing all day, and you'll just be busy writing all day, every day. Yeah, because we'll just make shit up, I feel. So the point of recovery, it says, it uses the word outgrow. Yeah. So it means that we're in a condition of, in the program, we're in a condition of directed change. Yeah. Directed by wisdom. That's growth. Yeah. So the growth of recovery is going to allow us to outgrow other shit. Yeah. So we outgrow fear. We don't master fear. We outgrow it. So the conditions, and what they're saying, the main condition that's cooking up all the fear is self-reliance. Yeah. When there's a loss of interest in self, that's a sign that you've lost reliance in self. Yeah. You're now trusting something else, the infinite. And hence, trains of circumstances are set off. And yet, in these cases, those circumstances bring about fortune you don't feel like you deserve, which is a sense of gratitude. Isn't that the case? Something sets off trains of circumstances, and those trains of circumstances produce effects, yes? And in a way, they're completely opposite. One produces misfortune, and the other produces fortune. You can't, I mean, if you just had that description, you wouldn't get on the wrong train at the station. Yeah. If you had that clarity, you wouldn't jump on the train of self if you had a choice, because you know you're going to take the local to a lot of misfortune. Yeah. Where you can, it's right on the train. It tells you. So what is that? That's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing, expecting different results. We keep getting on the same train, expecting to land somewhere else. Yeah, and then we're surprised when we don't. What's that about? I used to go out, do certain shit, get arrested, get off the next day. Either that night or the next night, I do the same shit and get arrested again. And I was surprised when I found myself in jail. Yet, in fact, I did exactly what I did 2 nights before that got me in jail. I mean, that means I was completely out to lunch. Yeah. I had no awareness of what was going on. I had to wait to feel the punch before I knew I was getting punched. Yeah. I didn't see anything setting up. Just bam. Then the flow would just collapse and I'd be in a catastrophe. Yeah. Because I'm gonna try to stay away from fires as a fire starter. Yeah, you're gonna set the fire. Your strategy to avoid fires is gonna produce more fires. Yeah, so yeah, just follow it. Why not look at, it's not taking your eye off the ball. If you move your attention from fear to self-reliance, I would imagine you're going to get a much better result by seeing self-reliance as the cause than fear. I mean, and if you're a big book person, there's the diagnosis. I mean, follow it. Yeah, we're not putting in something. He just says that fear is a corroding thread. It sets off all these trains of circumstances. Then he comes up with the suggestion. Isn't it because self-reliance has failed us that you're in this anxiety? Yes or no? Then if it is, can someone explain or understand what self-reliance looks like? I mean, you need to, sometimes when you're in something, you don't know you're in it. You need to hear a description of it to realize, Jesus Christ, I didn't know I was in a Toyota all this time. I thought I was in a fucking Rolls Royce. But someone just described how a Toyota drives. It sounds just like my Rolls Royce drives. Oops, I may have made a mistake. It's been a Toyota all along. I was just assuming it was a Rolls Royce. Yeah. So I'm assuming fear is the culprit, but really it's self-reliance. And what I found in my own experience, that I don't know, maybe there are higher forms, but I found that identification as self is a pretty high reliance on self. You know what I mean? If I'm relying on something, if I'm relying so much on a crutch, I call it my leg, I'm at a high level of reliance on the crutch. Yeah. So I feel like we're in a high level of reliance on that which has defeated us. Yeah. That's why we still live as if we're going to be defeated at any moment after years of recovery. Because we're still relying on self. We're listening to its take, yeah? Its projections, its story, its moment-to-moment diagnosis of how we are. And most of it's fucking insane, yeah? So, yeah. The whole book is great. We're not here, you know? I'm not saying Bill W. saw it the way we're seeing it. I don't think Bill W. may have seen a lot of it. I think it was a download through Bill W. and the people. Yeah. Something was moving them to get out a message that was going to help other alcoholics and addicts, because there hadn't been one out. Yeah. It was the first time it entered the fray, so to speak, a solution that could be, homogenized and offered to many. Yeah. This program. I just want to concentrate on the root of the problem, because I don't think there was a clear idea of it. Yeah. I mean, self, you can call it ego, but what the hell is ego? Yeah. Is there an ego that comes around the block and bullies you? No, it seems like it's an activity right where you're sitting or standing. Yeah. What's the promoting that activity? What's the driving force of that activity? Is it on your side, on your team's side, or does it have its own little agenda? Yeah. Because it doesn't feel like I'm looking for happiness, joyous freedom, and then I'm in jail. I have 4-year sentences and shit like that. It seems like there's a misfire in the connective wires. Yeah. I didn't know that there's an agenda that's running along my agenda, and it's overriding my agenda. Because I'm in a condition of powerlessness. So something can dominate and overrule me every day, which is alcoholism. Yeah. Most people at a certain point do not want to drink, and they keep drinking. All the things they've relied on have told them intellectually, circumstantially, relationship-wise, it is not wise to drink, yet they keep drinking. That sounds like an override to me. Sounds like something's in this system that's using this system that overrides us. Yeah. And now we're in the bondage of self. And a bondage of self is usually not something that's voluntary, is it? Bondage sounds like it's imposed on us. Yeah. To the point it's been so imposed, we don't even know it's imposed. Yeah. We're just taking it to be our life, our starting point. And I don't believe it is. I don't believe, if you see, let's say, the mental, physical condition as a starting point and the spiritual condition as a starting point, the trains of circumstance that are going to ensue from both those starting points are going to be quite different. Yeah. Recovery is trying to give us the possibility of a spiritual condition as our answer, as our solution. Yeah. Now, what would be the most reliable aspect of that solution? If it was you, then there would be a true reliance on that. Yeah. In other words, if that solution is always available at all times, right where you are, no matter what the circumstances or the consequences of, that's fucking reliable. Yeah. So how is that going to be? Well, if you are a spiritual condition, those conditions are obvious. And now the mental and physical are put secondary. Doesn't mean they're not important, but they're not all important. Yes? You have another quality that's being emphasized by a way of life of principles and sobriety and abstinence. Yeah? And the more the spiritual condition seems to get amplified, the more relief from the bondage of self. Yeah? So, yeah. That's what we're sharing here. And I probably wouldn't have been moved to share it if I would have heard it. I didn't hear it. And I was around AA for quite a while. And I still am around AA. But so someone's got to say something, you know, right or wrong, at least put out a possibility. I mean, if we were all gleaming lights, you know, on the citadel of the world, then there'd be nothing needed to say. But a lot of us travel still carrying a lot of weight while we're sober. Yeah, we still feel like we're running away from a pack of dogs that are nipping all day. I don't think that's a falsehood or a flaw in the programming. I think it's a flaw, FLAW, in the diagnosis. I do. Yeah, because if the self that you're not is living as if it's the one in the program and it's the one that's doing the program, I think it's going to severely limit the possibilities of the program. Yeah, I do. So, yeah. All right. Thanks, Kurt. I don't know if I touched everything there, but whatever.
Yeah, that was great. If you've got any questions, raise your hands. I thought of this when you were talking about this. I think of that Wizard of Oz, you know, when they're going into the city, the Emerald City, and they go into that big cathedral room and there's all those flames and there's that big face of that guy. And yeah. then that curtain gets pulled back and you see who's really pulling the levers on all this stuff. And it's a little old man, you know. It's just so funny because it's the same thing. It's kind of like when you say that about fear and self-reliance. It's like, oh, it's not that, it's this.
And also, it's been around a long time.
Yeah.
Yes. Just like the imagery of the Wizard of Oz. There's been constantly things get blown out of proportion by the mental state.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sees threats where there may not be any. It makes mountains out of molehills. It does a lot of stuff. It's like a kaleidoscopic. It's saying it's a singular, independent view, but it's like a kaleidoscopic. Shit comes out, you know, one moment you're peaceful and compassionate, next moment you're fucking sending messages to some person. You know what I mean? There doesn't seem to be any real continuity. Yeah, it's all a mishmash of whatever takes us over in the moment. You need something that can direct that traffic through us, and it's not us, and it's not self. Yeah, we need a guidance. We need a North Star. We need something to rely on. Yeah, and of course the options that we've made haven't worked out. You know, look at how many people come in the program and they make someone of the opposite sex their higher power. It doesn't work out usually. Yes, it doesn't, because it just doesn't. Yeah, but have you been commanded to go to any great lengths by the life of a higher power? I don't feel so. No. Any lengths, in most cases, there's no lengths in my experience, really. Yeah. So, yeah.
Any hands?
I feel like, just like sobriety of not drinking and not using has been the norm for many, many years. But you could say there's been so much more volatility. There is an alignment that will be more like you haven't drank or used for 34 years. Yeah, there's be like you've been chilled out. The problem hasn't existed for you a lot of days. Yeah, it can go that way because the program will allow you to outgrow the conditions that won't allow it to go that way. It will. Yeah. So you can become the new norm can be a peace of mind. Yeah. Yeah. The only thing is the head loves to put a ceiling on everything. Yeah. It wants to say, all right, all growth stops here. It doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't. Yeah. So.
Or it's always going to be this way.
Yeah, of course. It doesn't even know the way it is, to tell you the truth. It just makes up shit. Yeah. It's always going to be the way I see it, which could be totally different every second. How are you going to rely on that? Yeah. I've relied that I've been a good man. Then you do something that you think was bad, throws that whole fucking story out the window. Yeah. It's like you're on a precarious tightrope and something's playing on both ends with a little sadistic smile. it's hoping for you to fall. I thought you were my trainers. No, they're hoping you fall off the wire.
That's great.
Hey guys, not manageable had his hand up.
Oh,
Mr. Not.
Go for it.
Our friend from Sweden, I think. Yes.
Hey, Paul. I have so much respect for you and for what you doing here. And I have a question for you. How do you see higher power? It's only
I feel more like I'm seeing from higher power now. Yeah.
okay.
I feel like I'm more like a camera. So I sense something moving through, and I would call that higher power. But I don't see it. No. I don't need to. I don't have ideas about it anymore. I believe, this is my opinion, I think it's presented in the book that when you come in, because of our conditions, they made it quite easy by saying you can have a higher power of your own understanding. But surely that's going to change when you start feeling the effect of the program. I don't think it was supposed to be a lifelong relationship like I'm going to have a higher power of my own understanding. I would think shortly you would give up your own understanding to have a revelatory relation to a higher power. Yeah. So I feel like I'm looking from it most of the time, not looking for it. Yeah. Yeah. It works. That's when you know you're onto something, if it works.
Paul, could you say it's more of a viewing platform? You know, what you're seeing, like you said, what you're seeing from. Yeah.
Yeah, you've been changed. Yeah, instead of looking from the platform of self, you're looking from the platform of, and I'm just using the terminology of the program, the infinite. Yeah, they're two distinct little perches. Yeah, yeah. When you're looking from self, it doesn't want to see that there's another perch, but the other perch completely allows the self perch to be there. Yeah. And it just sort of minimizes its influence, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like the head, if you look at it, it sounds like the descriptions of the God of the Old Testament, really. I think they were listening to the head a lot. You know, it's going to smote any God put before it. And it was a jealous God. It sounded just like the head to me. Yeah. And then it was supposedly a New Testament where someone else had a different view of the higher power and was trying to sort of, and then he got whacked, you know, but trying to put it out there. God is love or whatever. Wait a minute. Where's that vengeful, smoke-driven whatever? So, yeah, they're platforms, yes.
Yeah.
When you're on it, you don't call it a platform, but
Right,
as a descriptive thing, yeah, descriptive. You're trying to, because the head works in comparison, you're trying to make an extreme imagery of infinite platform, self-platform. So you start getting a distinction between the two, so that you'll have the eyes to recognize the shit before you get hit with it, so to speak. Yes, or yeah, yeah. So, but the thing is true, really. Something sets off trains of circumstances. Yeah. Now, in my experience, what they called self, I felt, set off trains of circumstances that seemed to have brought me a lot of misfortune I felt I didn't deserve, which had me resenting a lot of things, situations. Yes, obviously. So then I come in AA, and then something else set the ball rolling, which wasn't self, let's say. And it set off trains of circumstances. And those circumstances started bringing me great fortune I feel I didn't deserve, and I had gratitude. So basically my role was similar, you know. I felt I didn't deserve both effects, but one like was an incredible petri dish for resentment and anger and fucking being super pissed off to grow, and the other is gratitude and wonder and awe, AWE, yeah. But it's the exact same trajectory in a way, but what's giving it the meaning is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you can start seeing with the eyes of the spirit, you see the fortune and misfortune, which the self has a very difficult time with. It doesn't see the fortune and misfortune. It doesn't learn usually. Yeah. So now you have the eyes to see, even though trains of circumstances have brought you what you would call misfortune, you see the fortune in it. Sort of like, I got pulled over by the cops, was one of the worst days ever. And then you realize after a year of sobriety, the only way I would have gotten into the program was being pulled over by the cops. So that misfortune actually brought about a great amount of fortune. Yeah. So now you start seeing things in a different eye, with a different eye. Yeah. Not with effort. You're being changed. Yeah. The seeing continues, but what's changing is going to change this, how you see shit. But the seeing is always going on, yeah? But something changes. Something gives the directive, a different directive. So while you're looking to get high or whatever, now you're looking to be of service, let's say. Yeah. There was looking in both examples, yes? Yeah. Yeah. And let's say you feel like you found spirit, then you're not wasting time looking for it. So instead of looking for it, you're being it, which I feel is a pretty damn good condition. This isn't anything I'm doing, but I'm not 2 levels below a coconut. I can recognize shit when it comes through me. Like I'm not gnawing at some idea that I got to get something or do something to somebody. You know, I could care less, really. I wish everyone the best, but in a way, I'm like healthful. I'm like in a healthy condition of indifference, so to speak, because I really truly believe anything that could happen to you could be used to bring you great fortune. Yeah. I do. So, who am I to rush to a judgment and say, "Oh, you're really screwed"? You may not be. That may be a necessary proponent of a process that you're not at the end of. Yeah. So who wants to keep someone from their bottom? It could be a disservice. So I'm not saying all times, but sometimes. And it's good to have the eyes to see that.
Yeah.
So you don't try to save someone who doesn't want to be saved. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, yeah.
We got a couple hands up. Steve, you want to jump in here and then we'll get Kaiser.
Steve?
Yeah, that me.
Hey, Steve, how are you?
Hi, Paul. Nice to meet you. I'm going to say it's good to listen to you. I've been on here twice, I think. It's the first time I've connected. But you, when you were talking then about self, and it's an interesting view you have on it all, and I like it. You know what I mean? It's sort of, in a sense, the way I look at it. But I never heard it talked about in the 12 steps, because you did say like Bill probably didn't even experience a lot of this stuff. And I've often thought that over years. He can't have known 3 years sober this stuff. I went mad 3 years sober, absolutely nuts. But it's sort of, it's worked, hasn't it? And you can't keep going back to it, and it's always right. It seems to be most of the time anyway. But I'm going to. It's asking a question here that I don't usually ask, because I've been around here a long time. You know what I mean? It's like call an old timer these days. You know what I mean? So most people expect me to know the answers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes I expect me to know the answers. You know what I mean? But to talk to someone now who's been around, I don't know, same sort of time, I suppose. I still suffer from self so much. All over years, I've never been quite satisfied with what I've got from AA. Always been seeking for more.
Yeah.
What is the magic? You know what I mean? And when I get into, I'm a bit of a wobbly place. I go wobbly. I can be bulletproof for a while. I mean, it's hunky dory, you know what I mean? And every now and again, some will be said, or some will fall out, or whatever, and my head just goes with it. I can't. It takes me to a sort of low spot where I'm insecure, I'm frightened, I'm this and the other. But it always passes. It always comes back. And sometimes I wonder, is there some ample you're missing here? I mean, at this stage of the game, I shouldn't be missing much. But I still feel there's some, when you said that, if you're feeling peace, or I have my share of peace. I have my share of bloody hell as well, you know what I mean? And, I would say about that, that's about it, really. Can you say all about that?
Thanks, Steve.
I didn't hear the last bit. What did he say, Kurt?
Well, he was talking about, could you say a little bit about this?
About the coming and going of the head and stuff?
Yeah.
Well, the coming and the going and the coming and the going and the coming and the going, because he can't stand still, first of all. It's agitated. Like the old in India, they used to talk about meditation, and like you have a pole and you put the monkey on the pole and it have them going up and down. Let's just say like following the breath. And after a while, this peace, the monkey's agitation stops, and then there's peace with the monkey. Yeah, it's not the monkey having peace. The monkey is the agitation. So now there's a peace because the monkey stops moving. Yeah. So the head is going to come and go. But after you've come and go a lot of times, and you always arrive at the same place when you're dropped off, maybe you've never left that place. Yeah. Maybe all the coming and going is the seemingly so of the mental state, you know, the seeming meaning it appears to be true or false to you. Yeah. So the head goes based on it's split. It's not at peace. It da. It can only hold its breath for so long. And then it comes, you drop it, and there you are. That which is always available at all times. Then the head goes away. After a while, you lose. There's a loss of interest in aligning yourself to those head movements. That's all. The head movements continue, but you don't get up. You don't get up from the chair, so to speak. Yeah, that's how it grows, I feel. Yeah.
I like the sound of that, but I've been around about 30 odd years now. You know what I mean? It can be still just as.
But if you really looked at it objectively, it's the volume and the length of it has changed. Yeah, most of it. Yes, it's like before.
Yeah. Go with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you could see, you know, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but there's a growing out of it. Yeah, there's signs of a growing out of it. The shit doesn't blow as hard and it doesn't last as long. Something's taking the wind out of the sails. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't look at that, do you? Well, I don't. When I'm in it, I don't look at that bit.
That's why it's good to point it out, so we can see gratitude where we're not seeing gratitude. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, because the gratitude is going to promote more diminishing of the length and the volume. Yeah. Yeah. So just look at what happens. And I have no opinion on climate change or whatever, but just look at what happens. The conditions change, and then the storms there's always been storms get more vicious. They last longer. They drop more water. Yes?
Yeah.
Not because of the storms, but the conditions have become more open to larger, more drastic and violent storms. Yeah. So if you want to try to strangle and throttle that storm, you're missing the point. It's only blowing as hard as it is based on the conditions that are allowing it. Yeah. So we try to get to the causes and conditions in recovery. So there's a change there, let's say, like in our attitude and outlook, which would be conditions of storms and how the weather goes in our lives. Yeah. Day-to-day living. Yeah. And so it targets that, because that is what's giving the strength or taking the strength away from the storms. Yeah. There's going to be storms. You're going to hear news that's going to be totally appropriate for you to be bummed out. I lost a friend or something like that. Yeah. This is what happens. But the healthy condition allows much more adaptability to what's going on. You face life successfully. Yeah. That's what happens. You learn how to, you realize, you admit you don't know what to do a lot of the times. And instead of doing something anyway, you don't do something. You just, like, people call me and they want me to make a decision. And I say, well, I'm not going to tell you today. I'm just going to sit with it. Yeah. I don't think about it. I just walk around, and then I get back to them and I say, I don't feel like, I don't want to go that direction or something. Yeah. And I just trust that and just go on. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's been a way I've learned how to face life successfully, not based on having the same conditions, trying to meet the same storms and shit. The conditions have changed. So I live through the storms a lot better. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the point. So there's always going to be storms. Yeah. Sometimes there's dry periods. Nothing's happening. Yeah. You're not getting at as much work as you think you need. And then suddenly you get a lot of work. Yes. Mm-hmm. It goes like this. So I don't only have gratitude when I get a lot of work. Yeah. I have gratitude. I have an attitude of gratitude now. I don't have... Gratitude's not an experience for me as much anymore. It's a view. Yeah. It's part of a new attitude and a new outlook, where before nothing was never enough. Now enough is a very, very important word in my life. It's incredibly important. I reach points where it's enough. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. So, yes. So I feel the mental gyrations and agitations, we are saddled with that. Yeah. We are saddled with that. The greatest, just like my dog, it wants to jump up on you. And everyone that knows what to do about dogs says you got to ignore it. Yeah. And then it will stop. If you react, it's going to do more of it. Yeah. This is what recovery changes. It changes our reactions to storms, so that we don't feed the storm. Yes? We go through what it is, but we don't add fucking days and tons of gallons of water to it. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going, that's the change we're under. And I'm a witness to it in my own life. I don't know how this life's been pulled off, man. Because even AA, it became very clear the first year or two that all the strategies I lived by were completely fucked. I mean,
yeah.
and yet it still worked. It's still, I managed to survive.
Despite, oh, yeah, definitely. I know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yep.
Yeah.
See, people, I think a lot of times, that there's an old statement, sometimes perfect is the enemy of the good. Yeah. You think there should be nothing should ever bother me. And then you miss there's been a growth concerning that. And that growth, to the miracle food for that growth is gratitude. Yeah. You have an honoring of, hey, like we had another meeting and the lady was speaking about something that had happened. She was totally lost, totally up the ass of self for 8 hours. But some people have been up there for 50 years. I said, you should be fucking happy. It was fine. You know what I mean? And you knew that you weren't before and you're not now. A lot of people don't have any starting and ends. They just find themselves in a continuation of it. So there's a lot of gratitude to be entertained. Yeah. I mean, just today, I'm sitting here. My girlfriend and I both had terrible sleeps last night. It was like we picked some demon up or something. And I mean, I felt so shitty most of the night. Not physically so much, though I have a sinus problem, but mostly just, felt like we were getting pounded by something. And then woke up, shook it off, and everything's fine. Yeah. Now, a lot of people would just spend weeks talking about that one night's sleep. Put it to fucking rest. It doesn't need to be shared and moved around and occupying you. It's under bury it and move on. Yeah, you're in good hands. But I wasn't last night. Yeah, just like, yeah, but how about 800,000 other nights? Yeah, so the head is crazy. The head wants to, forget a miracle in 20 minutes and wants to emphasize one bad night for like months. Yeah. Everyone you meet, I had a bad night last night. They don't even ask you. You just like dump it right on them. You know what I mean? Then you wait with them to tell you they had a bad night, and then there you go.
Yeah.
The disease multiplies.
Yeah, maybe. That's just sometime when I'm a bit flip-flopping and don't ever get it better than this. But it does get better than this. I know it does. I've been just waiting for it to pass, I suppose.
And what we're sharing is hopefully it will work on the conditions and causes level. Yeah. And there'll be changes there which initiate a lot of trains of circumstances. Really a lot. And hopefully there'll be more fortune than misfortune, so to speak. Or you'll have the ability to see fortune in misfortune. Yes? Yeah. There's no one else going to do it for you. Yeah.
No.
We have to go under the change. Yeah. Yeah. This isn't like yeah. So nice to meet you, my friend. Yeah.
And you.
Thanks.
See you later.
Kaiser, why don't you jump in here, buddy?
Gotcha. Thanks, Kurt. Thanks a lot, Steve, for that. Hey, Paul. I guess my question is a little bit of language, or maybe it's just checking in. Maybe it'll be tricky to get a question out of this, but you were talking about your concept of a higher power, and you just said that you kind of like see that you're seeing through the higher power. Okay. For me to be able to kind of translate that, just kind of checking in, like I've been using the Alcoholics Anonymous, like the program, and we have different kind of languages and stuff. And so I use that language because we can kind of understand where we're coming from. So there, when I did the first step, the terminology that I've been using is on page 30. We don't have to go through that, but I'm just going to show you where it came from. And it said, we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. And innermost self is the term that kind of popped out for me. So the one term is innermost self, and then the other term is the unexpected inner resource, which seems to be kind of where we get some sense of a higher power from. And being involved with all of these Zoom talks with you, Paul, and all the things that I've done with Zen, all the stuff that I've done with the 12 steps, and then my morning watch, kind of like an Oxford group thing that I've been doing. It seems it kind of comes down to listening to my innermost self and operating from that innermost self. And that's where there's like the higher power. It's just, I can't get in there, obviously, but there's a certain sense there. And to take instruction and listening to whatever's coming from that innermost self. And it almost seems to be able to discover a way to listen to the innermost self more accurately than what the head is saying. Does that make sense to you? Is that what you're kind of talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
But I also take it with a view, a distinctly different view between infinite and self. It's sort of like the idea of the Holy Ghost in the Course in Miracles.
Okay.
So in that way, life is happening, yes? And it's being collated or digested or translated by the brain.
Right.
Yes? Yeah. So there's an experience of seemingly outside forces a lot of the time and seemingly inside forces, and something is collating it, narrating it, and coming to judgments and conclusions. Yeah. So let's say that same data, the same information is brought in and something else collates it and translates it and highlights what it thinks is valuable and underemphasizes what it thinks is not valuable. Okay. It's the same data, but what's extracted from it is completely different based on the intention of what's extracting it. The Holy Spirit, or let's say self, yes?
Right.
So self inserts an agenda into what it sees, hears, feels, what's taken in. An agenda is inserted in that, and then it cherry picks. It looks at what, and then it keeps shit out, yes? Yeah. And it emphasizes with an agenda, with an intention, mm-hmm. with a drive. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now the Holy Spirit has a whole different other intention. It was cast in Recovery Program, the book, as happy, joyous, and free. So it's going to take that same information with a different intention and translate it, and you're going to be that at the effect of that and the expression of it, yeah. And then you'll be receiving information differently from that, yes. And so basically, and let's say you want to call the self and the Holy Spirit, they're not things that are in this thing. Right. They're of mind. So a different aspect of mind is taking the information and downloading its take. You still hear the old take, but mm-hmm. Perhaps there's a better way. And that better way is trusting the infinite rather than finite self. So now you're more interested of following the new download than the old download. Yes?
Right.
And now you can distinctly tell the difference between the old and the new, so to speak. And the new was always available at all times. It was just seemingly overridden for a while, and now it ain't. Yeah. Yeah. So
right. And as we begin to listen to that or see it or whatever, does that start to strengthen that listening to that Holy Spirit thing, or is it just kind of like find out?
No, of course it strengthens. That's why it talks about growth.
Yeah.
Growth is like you grew into something and then you can grow out of something. So
Okay.
We're not that something in a sense. See, that's the thing. We're whatever, and we grew into something, and now we're outgrowing those somethings.
Mhm.
You know, we're outgrowing the aspect of that something we seem to grow into, which is this idea of self.
Okay.
Yeah, and so the fear that comes along with that and all that shit, we've had enough, hopefully, and now we're outgrowing that based on the change on the conditional level, not you outgrowing it. Kaiser trying to outgrow it is more growing of Kaiser.
Yeah.
Self. So
Yeah.
that you need to have that warning and be clear about, because a lot of people thinking they're on a noble journey are just caught in the idea of self, can't get out of self, because that's what's happening.
Yeah.
They're trying. Yeah, their head is. They're taking information. They've had some newfound information, but it's getting mixed with the old information. And now self is trying to get out of self.
Yeah.
And the new information is you're not self, really. Yeah.
That's helpful.
So
it's very hard to talk about this stuff, but it's very helpful. Mm-hmm.
But it's a feeling, and you can say, something's translating something. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you feel like you're more the receiver of downloads than the download itself?
Absolutely.
Like, doesn't a resentment almost feel like a download? You get an opinion from self. You should be really fucking pissed off. And then there you go. There's a response to that. I'm really pissed off. Yeah. You're just, I feel, mostly an empty vessel, and it's what's moving through you is going to be the biggest effect.
Mm-hmm.
And we have it a very rudimentary, simple, dualistic view. It's either faith in the infinite or finite self. Yeah. Yeah. And finite self will say it has faith in the infinite, but that's more faith in the finite self.
Yeah.
So you gotta just understand the warnings of how it regroups and how the system is very elastic. Yeah. And it will just keep trying to be the system with whatever you meet. In other words, it will suck in a new message and make it an old message.
And those patterns are relatively small. It only does it in a couple of ways, or once you start to
it doesn't have an infinite amount of movements. No.
Yeah.
That's why it's easy to once you hear about alcoholism, it's easy to recognize it in yourself and others, mostly in others at first, but then in yourself. And, because we have seemingly the same thoughts and feelings and the same behavioral reactions that every alcoholic has and every addict has. So the uniqueness is completely dismissed because we're just a run-of-the-mill alcoholic. Thank God we're not, but in fact we are when you first look at the disease, yes?
Right.
Yeah. You have to tell the truth, and then the truth tells you something else. Yeah. You are an alcoholic, and therefore you're actually not down the road, yes? Not meaning Paul isn't. Paul never was. Alcoholism took over Paul. Yeah. Now something else is taking over Paul. It treats Paul much better and everyone around Paul much better. It's a win-win. Yeah. So, but I like the idea of the Holy Spirit of being the active aspect of the higher power in this day-to-day living, because it's taking the same data that's being sucked in, but translating it differently. Yeah. And so the machine gets a different conclusion downloaded. Yeah. So the conclusion, I feel pretty taken care of. Instead of the conclusion, I got to defend what I have and not lose what, Yes. Yeah. I think we're just a response, really, of shit. Yeah. Or a reaction. Yeah. So I'm responding to what's there. And I used to react to what was there. Yeah. So it's different. Yeah. It's cool.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Don't you think, Paul, there's a there's a shift where I'll use this analogy sometimes. When I realized that Santa Claus didn't exist, like the bubble popped.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to go back the next week and say, okay, I got to remember Santa Claus doesn't exist.
Yes.
It was like integrated or it landed. It wasn't like a constant reminder. Oh yeah. Don't forget Santa Claus doesn't exist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like the guy when I was younger. I went to India to see this dude I liked who wrote a book I liked called "Who Cares." He's passed away now, and he was using me as an example to the rest of the group. Talking to me, and he was talking to, let's call self the personal presence, and then the infinite the impersonal presence. Yeah. So then he asked me, Paul, do you have a home in America? And I said, I hope so. Yeah, I think I still do. And he says, all right, so when you leave home to go to work, do you have to keep chanting at work, I have a home, I have a home, I have a home? No. Going to work and changing the circumstances doesn't change the fact you're aware you have a home. Yeah. So if you work overtime, there's another fear that you may forget you have a home. No, you have a home. It's clear. Yes. Yeah, exactly. And then, and you're not trying to remember that you're the impersonal presence as the personal presence, because you are the impersonal presence. So there's no need to remember what you already are. Yeah, you just got to forget what you're not, which is the feeling of being a personal presence. Yeah.
That's good.
So that's sort of like that. You hit certain points where you're convinced, and there's no every 3 months a reconvincing. You've had it. It's the camel his back was broken. It just, yeah, it's a done deal. Yeah.
Well,
Now, what you do with that, the mental state may arise and cause you seemingly to forget that. And then you have to maybe relearn it a harsh way by going out and having that genie, come to, and then having to live its 3 wishes for you, which is nasty. But hopefully you have a certain habit of being sober that will see you through those momentary seeming lapses or threats. Yes? That's the real importance of a way of life. Just like not everyone is enthusiastically willing, but you have a habit in place that will bridge those lapses, and the sobriety just stays sober. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think a lot of stuff, I think we all have the ability to be convinced, unless we are mentally ill and shit like that. And when you are, I'm so happy I found I had that ability. And that's what I used to tell newcomers. What I would pray for is pray for the ability to be convinced.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you stop arguing with reality, you're fucked. Just start there, see what happens. Yeah. Just let it land. Yeah. So, yep. Thanks, Kurt, and everyone.
Yeah. So it's any other hands? It's I don't see any more, Paul. It's let me look real quick. Hold on.
Well, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, 11:35.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Remember if you're used to an hour meeting of AA and then you go to a country where they're an hour and a half? You never feel time as much as that. You're like, fucking another share. You just used to. So let me say hello to everyone.
Okay.
Not